There's epic fantasy, and then there is epic fantasy. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be comparing Game of Thrones and The Lord of the Rings to decide, in a night dark and full of terrors, which story is the one to rule them all. Before we begin, we publish new videos every day, so be sure to subscribe for more great content. We'll be looking at a range of elements, considering both the books and the TV and film adaptations so many have come to know and love. Round 1. World Building.
He won't be a boy forever. And winter is coming.
Anyone who has read or watched Game of Thrones, or A Song of Ice and Fire as the Prince series is called, knows that it is so well built, you'd think it hit the gym every morning. Each major house of Westeros contains complicated family trees, and each town has its own history mapped out for centuries. And not just in Westeros, because, oh no, this is world building. While George R.R. Martin did not create the languages that were later used in the HBO series, he did produce creation myths, religions, traditions, culture, and history for the Seven Kingdoms and across the Narrow Sea.
For the night is dark and full of terrors.
Weathertooth and the Bifrost, the sun's first light crept over the top of the trees and turned them all to stone.
J.R.R. Tolkien is the Alexander the Great of fantasy world building. In creating Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth, he created not just a world, but a complex creation mythology, including functional languages that can still be learned by enthusiasts to this day. If the details of lineage and history seem extra rich, and sometimes exhaustively detailed, in Lord of the Rings, it's because they are. The world of Middle-earth extends past what is contained in the print trilogy, or even the films. There is much more to Tolkien's extended universe. If any cinematic or bibliographic fantasy world is described as Tolkien-esque, well, you know who to tip your wizard's hat to. Winner, Lord of the Rings.
What did they say?
Round 2. Heroes.
I've killed brothers of the Night's Watch. I've killed wildlings. I've killed men that I admire. I hanged a boy younger than Bran.
What makes villains great can, ironically, make heroes frustrating. Maybe we're just being too black and white about it. But when rooting for a side in a fantasy world, it's nice to feel that one can make a solid moral choice. That's not to say the heroes of Westeros and beyond are not remarkable. They are remarkably human, with all their failings in tow. Jon Snow makes hard and at times shocking judgment calls as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Daenerys is willing to use entire city-states as a training ground on how to justly rule. And Arya is a damaged girl, who has maybe the coldest kills in the show. It's a thin line between the good they pursue and the domination envisioned by their more villainous counterparts.
You're no one. You're nothing.
I am no man.
They may be somewhat narrowly drawn, but the heroes of Lord of the Rings are beacons of virtue and hope. Resoundingly good and honorable, well, Boromir was a little complicated. Their traits are drawn from classic literary epics: loyalty, honesty, concern for the well-being of the masses, and bravery. Elves, hobbits, humans, dwarves, and even trees demonstrate these things in spades. Although reluctant to take up the mantle, Aragorn is a natural leader, unflinching in his efforts. Legolas and Gimli are the best allies a hobbit could have. Éowyn is courageous and loyal. Gandalf is a wise ass-kicking guide. Then there's Sam. Freaking Sam, the purest of pure friends, and maybe the bravest of them all.
I made a promise, Mr. Frodo. A promise. Don't you leave him, Samwise Gamgee. And I don't mean to.
Listen, the world right now really is dark and full of terrors, and some days you really just need the light of a Rendil, okay? Winner, Lord of the Rings.
I can't carry it for you. But I can carry you. Come on!
Round 3. Villains.
Sir Ilyn, bring me his head.
There is no doubt that there are villainous, treacherous, and downright slappable characters. Looking at you, Joff. But for the most part, they are more than what they seem in Game of Thrones. As in professional wrestling, bad guys become fan favorites, like Jaime Lannister. Even the more villainous characters like Cersei have their own real motivations, backstories, and a human side. Enough so that the viewer or reader understands how they became the way they are, even if you don't agree with their present actions. The truly sadistic individuals, Ramsay Bolton, Joffrey, and the like, are either clearly psychotic or deeply damaged, yet are still given their own story development.
She's a fine woman, your sister. I look forward to having her back in my bed.
Just because you're evil doesn't mean you can't be well-rounded evil.
In the fires of Mount Doom, the Dark Lord Sauron forged in secret a master ring to control all others.
The White Hat Black Hat divisions are pretty clearly drawn in Middle-earth. The heroes are literally on the side of light, while evildoers are sprung from darkness, mud, and fire. It's easy to spot the good guys in a scene. The beautiful, pastorally wholesome, and mythologically glamorous individuals who are sure to be your bros. On the other hand, the giant flaming eye is, like, bad. Tolkien used outward nature as a symbol of the corrupt nature within, not just with hideous monster orcs, but with humans whose evil shows through on the outside, like the treacherous Grima Wormtongue or the cowardly and scheming Denethor II.
You think you are wise, Mithrandir.
Except for the curious case of Gollum, twisted by the power of the One Ring, it is mostly easy to take a side in Middle-earth. Winner, Game of Thrones.
I think that sounds like a wonderful idea.
Round 4, Battles.
Any man dies with a clean sword, I'll rape his fucking corpse!
After Robert Baratheon found himself on the business end of a boar, and Eddard Stark lost a little off the top, the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros were thrown into chaos. The beginning of the second book, and second season of the series, saw the start of the War of Five Kings, and things never really slowed down from there. There are so many great battles, from the explosive Battle of the Blackwater, to the tense, emotionally wrought Battle of Castle Black, to the chill-inducing Battle of the Bastards. It is well nigh impossible to nail down the best, but with perhaps the greatest battle of all, that between literal ice and fire, looming over Westeros, we're sure the best is somehow still yet to come. Tolkien made sure his epic struggle between the powers of good and evil had plenty of emotionally resonant struggle along with fantastically detailed violence. Peter Jackson's masterful take on the trilogy successfully brought all of it to life. The harrowing Battle of Hornburg, also known as the Battle of Helm's Deep, saw our heroes cornered as they defended the Rohirrim against a massive onslaught of orcs, Uruk-hai, and other nasties straight out of Mordor. And who can forget the Siege of Gondor and ensuing Battle of the Pelennor Fields, where Sauron's forces attacked and yet our heroes reigned victorious. It's close, but for the sheer number of battles and their many surprising results and tense execution, we're giving this one to Martin. Winner, Game of Thrones. Round 5, Legacy.
Don't look away.
King of the Andals in the first
Father will know if you do.
Since HBO premiered Game of Thrones, it has reignited the high fantasy and epic genres, with many TV series like Vikings, The Shannara Chronicles, and Marco Polo cropping up over a spectrum of networks. We don't blame them for trying to tap into the literary adaptation success, but none have quite been able to match the pop culture phenomenon. They often focus too heavily on one of two aspects that make Game of Thrones a sensation. For example, violence, sex, fantasy, violent sex realities, medieval trappings, political intrigue, and so on.
There's a war coming, Ned. I don't know when, I don't know who we'll be fighting. But it's coming.
But they so often lack the detailed richness of character development and plot arc, and so they miss the core elements of what makes the Iron Throne narrative so engrossing.
One ring to rule them all.
On the other hand, there's zero doubt about it. Every high fantasy written or filmed since the 1950s is deeply indebted to Lord of the Rings. Geez, even the RR in George R.R. Martin is a nod to the late great John Ronald Reuel Tolkien. From his peerless academic background, Tolkien set out to write a great epic novel in the vein of Beowulf, and the extensive work that went into creating The Lord of the Rings has endeared it to countless fans over decades. Its fame shows no signs of slowing down. The books have sold over 150 million copies to date, and still fly off the shelves. And now, Amazon Studios has committed huge dollars to developing a new TV adaptation. The road goes ever on and on. Winner, Lord of the Rings.
And The Lord of the Rings by Frodo Baggins. You finished it.
Not quite. There's room for a little more.
So, by a score of 3-2, it's the one fantasy franchise to rule them all. Lord of the Rings forever.
Do you agree with our verdict? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo and subscribe for new videos every day.